This video, we cover the Oklahoma brokerage laws and rules. It is a handout that you have in your package. It is the most heavily weighted chapter of any of the chapters. It has 25 questions. It primarily deals with the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission laws, rules, and regulations about how we operate and how we what the rules and regulations that we abide by. Get into some pretty we get into quite a bit of detail in some of these numbers. You'll probably have to memorize at least 3 or 4 different numbers throughout this information, but it's the information as we go through it in these bullet points. All of this is relevant. So I encourage you and recommend highly that you know this document very well, because if you know this document, it will really help your score since it's so heavily weighted for your state exam. So with that, let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go down the list in your handout, just from 1 all the way down. All of this is relevant. You need to know it all. Okay, I can't express that enough. First, real estate commissioners are appointed by the government, or rather the governor, with the consent of the Senate. They are appointed for 3 years. So here's what happens. They request recommendations from the industry across the Oklahoma or the state. They send up nominees. The governor says, yes, I like these individuals. They appoint them to the commission. It's a government process. The Senate confirms them, and they become real estate commissioners. Real estate commissions are appointed for that 3-year period. The next, there are a total of 7. 5 brokers, 5 real estate brokers. There's one, I like to say someone like me, and that is an instructor, a school instructor. And then you've got the last, which is, so it's 5, 1 and 1, a member of the public. Now, a member of public usually has some kind of a background, at least, or knowledge of the industry as a whole. It might be a financial representative or an abstract company, or someone like that that's on the commission that has some intimate knowledge of us. But the rule just says 5 brokers, 1 school instructor, and then a member of the public. Okay, so that equals the 7 number of commissioners. Go to next. Fine for practicing without a license is $5,000, and it's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. OREC maintains a standing committee to review contracts. So think about this. There is some change in the industry that's relevant to us. The reason we maintain that standing committee, because at any time there might be some regulation change or financial change that we need to act on it immediately. So that standing committee is required to, come together, formulate the idea, determine a way to get it into our documentations, or it might affect the listing contracts or sales contracts. We need to get that thing secured and get it out so we aren't in violation of any rule or law. So think about the standing committee. It has to act quickly, and that's for our contracts. Next, you do not have to have a license if you are. Okay, these are the following individuals that don't have to have a license. Attorneys, you're selling your own property, or a resident manager of an apartment complex. Those are some of the ones that do not need a license. In order to apply for a provisional sales associate license, you have to be 18 or older. Good moral character. And let me stop there. When you finish this class, finish the modules, take your in-house, final exam that's provided to you, you will be asked to turn in a background check. You will need to get your fingerprints and a background, and you send that information to the Real Estate Commission, and they go through a background check. All right, so I stopped there on that good moral character because you will have a background check. Next portion there, the next part of that sentence, and complete a 90-hour provisional course. This is a distance learning. What you're taking is my pre-licensed distance learning course, 90 hours of the equivalent. A passing score is 75% or better. I want you to pass my class. You have to pass a 75% or better. You go to your PSI. When you attend your PSI final state exam at the PSI facility, you have to have 75% or better. And if you do, you get a passing grade. There's either pass or fail. And when you go down there, as you walk out, you exit. If you failed the exam, which we don't want that to happen. If the unlikelihood that you did fail, don't beat yourself up. Don't get panicky. It happens. Don't worry about it. Go back. I have some, you can call me. We can email. We can discuss it. I can go over some of the material with you. But what they'll do is whenever you walk out, if you did happen to fail the exam, they'll actually give you statistics to show you each module and how well or how bad you did in that case. So you receive that. If you pass it, they don't really give you anything. It just says pass, and you're off and running. All right. Next is the provisional sales license is good for a year. When you enter the business, you license with a broker, you have a provisional license. That provisional license is good for 1 year. That 1 year, you have to have a post-license course called, it's a 45-hour post-license course. There's various ways to take this. Many brokerages have, when you go on board, they provide that post-license class for you. But that's the requirement for the exam. You need to know. My license, when I first get licensed, is good for a year. I have to have 45 hours in that first year completed if I want to continue on. You must have a 45-hour post-license course in the first year, or you cannot apply for a sales associate license. At the end of the year, Real Estate Commission will send you a document that says, have you completed your post-license? Are you ready to go? And you continue on for your license from then on. And every other license you'll ever have lasts for 3 years, and that's important to know that. So you have this first year. It's really not an apprentice, but it's a good way to remember. It's kind of like this apprentice license. But again, that's not legally accurate, but it's just a good analogy. And then they want you to get some additional education. And then you go from there after that first year. 3 years, you have to have 21 hours, over and over and over, perpetual. 3 years, 21 hours. 3 years, every 3 years, 21 hours. Everybody has to do it. I have to do it. Whether you're a broker or an associate, you have to have 21 hours every 3 years. And within that, there's some core education. Just that one little unique year. When you're first licensed, you have this 45-hour additional training that you have to go through. Next, I believe it's the next sentence is what starts out with after. After the initial first year provisional, a sales associate license lasts 3 years. There it is. A broker's license is issued also for 3 years. There is no difference in a broker or a real estate associate or license. It's all 3 years. We all have 3 years. All associates and brokers will need to complete 21 hours of continuing education during the license period. Next, OREC issues licenses to all of these. They license associations. They license branch offices, corporations, brokers, and associates. Everyone will have a license or can get a license, and they'll have an associated number. Everybody gets a number or a license number. Brokerage offices, or rather broker offices, have to have specific location and available to the public during business hours. That goes back to a previous chapter where if the public, my associate is out of town, I can't get in touch with them, I need to have some place that I can go and have the broker in charge, help me with whatever issue that I might have. and it's got to be open during business hours. Next, concerning sex offenders, the code imposes no duty to disclose information about sex offenders. There's two things you need to note. One of them is not on here, but it's called psychologically impacted property. Psychologically impacted property is if there's ever been a suicide or a death of some kind, or they even had in the article recently ghost. If the seller thinks or could suspect ghost in the house. Anything that doesn't actually have to do with a physical property is not mandated to disclose that. What is mandated is if the buyer, the potential buyer of a property, they request that information. It says in our documents that says they can request it. They can ask the seller if there's ever been a suicide or a murder or a death or any of the number of issues. They can request that information, and then the seller has to respond in writing. So that's your obligation as a licensee to get to be the conduit for that information going back and forth. But if you know of something like that, you don't have to say it. You don't have a duty to disclose. Same thing with sex offenders. There are online services, police departments. You can go online. It says that the buyer has a right to investigate those things, but it doesn't give you the duty to disclose that information. You give them the conduit, the information the information for them to go out and find out about these things. Because we don't want really licensees or anybody saying, I think that person is, I think that person is. So you can see what kind of problems that could occur. But you will say, here's the area, here's your right and your responsibility to go determine these things. Go to this website and find out. And if there's any problems in that area, then you have a right to say, no, I don't want to buy a property in this particular area. The primary purpose of the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission is safeguard the public, provide resources for brokers, and investigate and sanction license activities. The primary purpose of the OREC is to safeguard the public, provide resources for the brokers, and investigate and sanction license activities. That's the primary purpose. There are other things. Promulgate rules. They impose fines, and they do a lot of things, but that's the primary purpose, and that's what you need to know. The examination fee is $60 to take your license exam. Ultimate responsibility for notifying completion of continuing education is the licensee. So when you start into your career and you're taking educational or continuing education, then you're responsible for getting that information to the Real Estate Commission. Although in many cases, the instructor will electronically send that information down, says this individual with this license number, passed my class or attended my class. You still want to follow up on those things and make sure that the Real Estate Commission has that on record. So that's the licensee's ultimate responsibility. If you fail to complete your 45-hour education, you will not be allowed to renew your license. A broker may have multiple offices, but must have a broker in charge of that office. Some companies have a principal broker, and then they have 5 other offices around a region. Real Estate Commission wants every person in that, or at least a broker in every single office, so that licensee can go to a broker and be managed by someone that is a broker. So your license will reside, so to speak, at your broker where you are or within that office. So you have a principal broker, and all the other offices will have to have a broker in charge. It's a requirement. If a licensee is working out of a branch office, then the license is issued to the branch office. When an associate advertises, then it must be under the supervision of the broker and include the name of the broker. You must disclose relationship on all lists and sales. So all these magazines and all these different periodicals that are going around everywhere, you're a licensee, you're supposed to have the name of the brokerage on all those advertisements. Also, if you're selling your own property as a licensee, you must disclose that. If you're representing a family member in a contractual relationship, supposed to disclose that. Okay, we want to know the relationships, and then if you're actually selling your own property or buying your own property, you must disclose that. If an associate leaves a broker and a broker refuses to let them go, then the associate must send a certified letter and produce evidence of the letter to the real estate commission. So if you're in a situation where you decide to change brokerages, that it does allow you, if the broker refuses, then you have to send them a certified letter, give them the real estate commission documentation that you're leaving. But when you leave a brokerage and go to another brokerage, the listings still belong to the listing brokerage. All right, so that's important to know that for the exam. Next one there is good faith money or earnest money must be held in a trust account and shall not be commingled. The amount is negotiated and is not required. Earnest money needs to be deposited by the end of the third banking day following the completion of the contract. A broker is responsible for the entire amount. These are cut and dry information you need to know. The obligation of the associates and brokers to deposit these funds in the law is called duty to account. Look at duty to account as the umbrella under which all the laws are that specify what you can and cannot do with other people's money. The commingling, the third banking day. All of those are called the duty to account. In other words, duty to account for other person's monies or other person money is under the duty to account. And here's something interesting. On the second part of that sentence, non-depository escrow items can be used if appraised and placed with an authorized escrow agent. So that means if you have a diamond ring or a boat or anything else, if you can appraise it and it's held with a entity that can can be protected in some way, then that can be used as earnest money or value. A settlement statement may be defined as the final accounting of the transaction dealing with the associated expenses. Closing a property, the settlement statement should have all of the bills associated with that transaction. They'll even ask for the bills, even if they've been paid, what they call paid outside of closing. They still want it in there. Just in case there's any problems in the future, they want to have who's done the work, how much was paid, where it was paid, and have a final accounting of all those documents. The OREC is not an arbitration entity for disputes among brokers, associates, or clients. You don't go to the real estate commission and say, so-and-so didn't pay me my commission check. I have a fight with another broker about a commission, whatever it is. They don't arbitrate those things. Brokers to other brokers, those are things that you have to go and arbitrate or work out in different venues, such as small claims court and other things. They don't arbitrate those kind of things. They do collect complaints. If you feel like a broker is not abiding by the ethics or the rules of the rules and regulations, then they will investigate those things. But they don't arbitrate these disputes, money disputes between brokers. Last, a licensee can only accept commissions from their brokers and no one else, such as bonuses. So if a broker says, hey, if any of your associates bring a buyer to our, or give us a consummated contract, we work it out, I will give them a bonus. Can't do that. What you do is you will pay the selling broker a bonus, and that bonus is distributed among the broker and the licensee's commission rate that they've agreed upon. So no paying each other, it's always paying from broker to broker. The last is a license dated July 1st will expire on June 30th, 1 year later. All right? That concludes the Oklahoma license rules and laws.